Hello. How's everybody doing out there? Poseidon, Data Lake, we have all of you. This is great. Thank you so much for joining today. I guess we're waiting for a couple folks to file in here, but we have an exciting AMA today. We're excited to be discussing a lot of awesome things that we have been working on, and biggest thing is really uniting data and infrastructure between all the DeSci DAOs and everything we're trying to do. So we're trying to come up with a general consensus in how we put this together, because if we don't do it this way, it won't really work in the grand scope of things. We have to communicate and we have to be together. So I guess, yeah, I'd like to say thanks for Poseidon DAO and our great AMA we had the other day. And also speaking with Data Lake, it's been a great couple weeks. I know we've all been dealing with the general market doing its thing as it does to people like us in this industry, but it's been great. And you know, I just keep our heads down and we just been working. I see Ed's there. I see a lot of folks following in. So I'll give it another minute or two. Mack is actually with Data Lake in Warsaw, so I think they're trying to get connected here again. But at least you can hear me this time, and that's great. So yeah, thank you. So anyway, I guess if we could kind of while we're waiting, Poseidon, if I don't know if Marco, if that's you, just kind of just say hey, and Data Lake and everybody else, and kind of wait
Yeah,
for the
just to let you
follow.
know, we are already here. We are ready. We are ready to rock.
Oh, oh, I see you.
Hello,
Okay,
everybody. It's us.
there you are. Okay, great. Well, anyway, now that we have some structure here, um, yeah, Poseidon's here, Data Lake, Mac. Do you want to just give a general intro as to who's there, and we'll kind of kick it off?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the
Awesome.
idea of this meeting happened to be a few weeks ago. We started some discussions and analysis, and basically, we were always getting back to the same spot. Why we are not cooperating with Data Lake? why we are not utilizing their product and their infrastructure. So a few days ago, we came back to this with the official call we had last week, I guess. And after that, basically, when we understood each other, what we are doing on both sides, I think it became kind of obvious that we cannot not work with each other. We have to do something together. And it looks like this something will be something really big in terms of the quality, the governance, the patient's advocacy, and basically everything that is necessary for anyone who will take part in any kind of scientific research to reassure those people that the data that we are using is really kept in a absolutely highest standards of the governance, um, quality control, and basically um, everything that is necessary for us to feel comfortable when we are sharing the data with someone else. With me is Wojtek. Wojtek is the CEO of Data Lake. The fun part is that we live in the same city, and
Exactly.
we're probably meeting each other sometimes on some places, conferences, but basically ask some questions to Data Lake, and today also probably introduce some information, especially about the data alliance that we are trying to set up, start up right now. And after discussion that we have here for the last 2 hours, it looks like it's a mandatory part to utilize Data Lake with this project. Absolutely. Wojtek, floor is yours.
There couldn't have been more signs for us to do something together. Starting with us living literally 15 minutes drive from each other. So
Yeah.
it's our great pleasure to have Mack in our offices. And after a really productive brainstorm and sharing the experiences of working together in this space for quite some time, we are growing even more and more convinced that definitely we need to work together, and we see a huge overlap and potential in our products. So everything seems to be fitting perfectly. There is a lot of rationale and logic in us working together.
Mhm.
And as we are going to lay out in a second, I think that we are going to introduce a new standard of dealing with patients' data
Yeah.
ethically and transparently. And we couldn't be more excited to kick it off today.
Yeah. Yeah. So starting with questions and basically to introduce our guest today, somehow Data Lake is our guest. The question is, what was the beginning? What came where the idea of Data Lake came up from? What was the initial thought that makes you thinking about this?
I'll first comment on us being your guest, because in the same time you are our guest in our offices. So I think this is also kind of a symmetrical partnership we are
And
looking
I
at.
think you are also transmitting the video of this discussion on your social
That's right.
media. So we have like a double impact.
That's right. That's right. But going back to your question, and thank you for asking that. So how it all started? Essentially, we, as the founders of Data Lake, myself and Ligia, we are both medical doctors, and we thought that it would be really cool to build another donation system in healthcare. We have blood donation, bone marrow donation systems, organ donation, whole body donation, reproductive cell donation. So all these donation systems that addressed a dire need for some sort of valuable, tissue or organ, or a piece of a human being to share with other. And right now we are, of course, living in a digital age where data is becoming increasingly important. It's also a piece of ourselves, our history of disease, our history of life, our history of struggle. And it seemed just right to apply the same framework of thought that we once applied for sourcing blood to sourcing data. So at the end of the day, data is the blood of the innovation. We need medical data to fuel progress with drugs, with discovery of algorithms, with discovery of essentially any kind of clinical innovation to be put into practice. And we concluded that the framework exists. It's the model of donation, and it would be incredibly cool and useful to build or apply the same framework for medical data. So this is how we started with this grand idea of building medical data donation system. In the meantime, when you're building a startup, you tend to have this painful discovery moment that you can't change the world from the day one, and you have to focus on a very narrow value proposition, on a very narrow niche to actually get going, get your first customers, and get traction. In our case, it's become consent management for medical research. So we are all about making sure that the consent part is taken care of, that the patients can verify their consents on chain, can be absolutely sure about what they consented to, but in the same time that all the players in the process of collection of patients' consents, which is called patient recruitment, are also adequately rewarded. And are also given the tools that are needed for finding the patients that are right for research. So as Data Lake, we are all about patient consents. We are all about streamlining the recruitment for different kinds of medical trials or medical experiments. And this is also where we hope that our technology will be useful for AxonDAO.
It sounds like we have three layers. First is to find the patients that are fit to some certain defined research. Second layer is to collect all necessary details. Like you can imagine that in the real world you have a paper document, you have to sign some things, write down
Exactly.
your I don't know, social number or something. So the second layer is to collect in a digital way, but with a complete understanding of working laws like GDPR and other things. And the third layer is something extra, like you said about rewarding sides of this process. So if a doctor or institution that is helping you to collect to bring patients that match criteria, you are automatically able to pay back, reward the institution or doctor for the patients that he will find and direct to your research, right?
You absolutely nailed it in a very precise way. So let me also break it down, because for any kind of innovation to be put in clinical practice, this innovation has to go through clinical validation, which is called a trial or research, right? And always, if you think about an algorithm, if you think about a drug, you always have to test it with a certain population of patients.
Oh, yeah.
So most of the times, let's imagine that you are testing a novel device for stroke detection. So you need patients with stroke, right? You need patients who are not too old, not too young. You need patients who are living next to the research center. You need patients whose results of this experiment would not be clouded by concomitant conditions that they have. So essentially, you're looking for a very well-defined population of patients with what we call inclusion and exclusion criteria.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to have patients with stroke who are between 30 and 50 years old, living, close to Warsaw, without heart failure. So this is who we are looking for. Now let's play a little game, and let's imagine that you are a researcher. You are looking for 200 patients with stroke, or who had stroke, right? With all these kind of inclusion and exclusion criteria. What would be your first thought? How would you find them? Where would you look for stroke patients?
I wouldn't have an idea where to go. Basically, probably only I can imagine that I would be only able to find such a people if I would work in the industry and would be able to see them on a daily basis. But usually there is no easy way to make it happen.
Exactly, because you don't work with these patients on everyday day basis. Fortunately, there are people who do, and they are called doctors.
Yeah.
So, first idea is that you go and talk to a bunch of doctors and let them know that you are running an important experiment for science and you're looking for 200 patients
Mm-hmm.
who had stroke, right?
Yeah.
So you informed these doctors that you're looking for these patients. They are able to verify whether these patients meet the criteria for your trial, but doctors are forgetful and busy. So you need to, remind them, give them a tools that would make it really easy for them to include the patients in your research. And of course, you need to motivate the doctors, most likely financially, so that they are, properly incentivized to work with you and do the physical work of looking for the patients for your research. So this process is called patient recruitment, right? And 80% of patient recruitment globally is done by working with doctors. So the same process applies for a pharmaceutical company, just on a much larger scale. The same process applies if you're an AI company who's working on an algorithm. At the end of the day, you need to work with doctors who are looking for the patients for your research. And this is where we come in handy. So, first of all, we are giving the tools to collect the consents securely, transparently. The patients stay in full control. They can also revoke the consent whenever they want. So, there is this layer of trust. And second, we make it worth a while for the doctor. So we are making it, very transparent that we are rewarding doctors with a certain, with a certain benefit, with a certain incentive for including patients into this research.
I've seen the system today. I mean, you presented me how it works, and the fun part is that I was not even thinking about it, but there is a dedicated interface for me as a patient. I can see in what projects or research I gave previously the consent, and I can revoke it. I can. There is even a button that was kind of odd for me, that you can revoke everything at once, like disconnect from everything with one button, and it's kind of fair towards the patient. But what I see is that also how you are making the process easy. I'm thinking about how we would like to implement this, and I see that in our interfaces we don't even have to change anything. The probably the integration will be so seamless that basically what we have to do as the researchers is just to add a project in your back office and then include a piece of code on our side
Exactly.
where patient can submit, would like to try take part in this research that we have. But before we will really connect this person, this user with our research, it will be taken to the data lake system. Then we'll go through all questions and things that she should put there as a kind of statement of the inclusion and
Exclusion
So let,
criteria.
exclusion
let me
criteria.
kind of back up
Yeah.
a little bit for everybody. And this is how I see it. And this is the best way maybe to relate. And Data Lake could discuss this maybe. Is that it's like Plaid for your bank that you use now to connect everything. It's like a type of seamless
Yeah.
integration that
Exactly.
verifies your data. And you could
We
maybe
like to compare
yeah.
we like to compare ourselves to DocuSign for consents, right? So you get a link, you sign the consent, you get the, full platform for managing that consent afterwards, but we are gonna make it easy for you.
And two things. First thing, when we spoke like an hour ago about this, I was using Plaid as an example
Yeah.
to explain how we would, in a perfect situation, how it should be done. Wojtek said absolutely yes. And the second thing is that even because the data lake has its own API, we can include the interfaces that shows to the user the consents he gave inside of our system. So even if you don't have to go outside anywhere, you can disconnect you can remove your consent from our system internally and from basically any system that would like to integrate with data lake anyhow. So
Exactly. So in that regard, think about us as revoke.app. Perhaps some of you Degen folks have used it, but this is an app that we use for revoking access to our wallet. For any other external dApp that we previously authorized. So data lake is going to be the same. So if you gave a bunch of consents for scientific research and you feel like you're not comfortable with that, with a click of a button, you can revoke access to all of your previous consents to all of your previous data.
I have a question. You need to explain this, but with less details than you gave it to me. But in terms of the data traceability and the whole governance part, when I saw the details how data lake works, I've seen that this whole agreeing, revoking, all those processes are really not complicated, but they are kind of mundane in terms of making this in a proper way.
True.
As I and you probably too, we were both doing other projects before in healthcare, and basically also you were a doctor, so you on a daily basis you know what are the minimum expectations in terms of how you trace the data of patient, every consent, every information you will utilize. All that things are kind of it's a kind of protocol, and there is no way to make it. There's just one way to make it right.
Mhm.
And when you look at the data lake, it's kind of internally, it's really complicated, but it's very properly done. Can you tell us more about how you are collecting the data and how you are using the blockchain to keep those timestamps, all those things? But please use the less complicated language. You showed me everything, but so people will understand that.
I will try. So maybe let's play another game. Imagine that we want to mutually consent to something, right? To something of value. So let's say that we want to consent to, I don't know, 10% of AxonDAO treasury being allocated personally to me. And I would like to prove that this consent indeed took place. So, how would I do it? I have to identify the individual who consented. So, I have to say that this was Mack and not somebody else, right? I have to identify when the consent took place, if it was in fact today or a year ago, or perhaps an erroneous date in the future, right? I have to identify to what you actually consented. Was it 10% of AxonDAO treasury or 1%, or maybe it wasn't even your treasury at all, right? So we need to know the content of the consent. And finally, we need to know the way the consent was given, whether it was given, orally, whether it was in a written form. Did I check your national ID and, I verified your identity, and so on and so on. So breaking it down really simple, what matters if you are speaking about a consent are just four parameters. Who gave it, when the consent was given, how it was given, and what was the content of the consent. So what we do is we, using some complicated functions, we store these parameters on chain. So if there is any dispute about what we consented to, we can always refer to the single source of truth. In that sense, as you enlightened me today, we can call our system a total quality management system, where we can give this undeniable proof of the action of the user.
Data like what I saw is like a audit trail systems we were creating always for the healthcare systems platforms. You've mentioned today IQVIA. We were working with 3% of the data from 3% of the population from Germany to make some huge studies around the health system. And it's a total quality management system. I mean, it's I don't see the way how you can make it more efficient and precise. So on top of the things that you've mentioned, you also collect the timestamp when the whole approval was also recorded on blockchain.
Exactly.
So also you can with this you can trace anomalies and situations that can I don't know in what situation that could happen, but nevertheless, basically every research study project that would like to utilize healthcare data, you can collect the data anyhow you want to, but you need to have a definition that people who gave this data to you, they really gave you a consent.
Exactly.
And the more interesting part is that the thing that data lake is doing is maybe I shouldn't say niche, but basically all of us we need it. Like there's no way. I mean, us trying to build this feature alone would take us probably 4 or 5 months if we would have details how you did it and just go directly with the latest version you have. So I mean, I'm so happy that we have this conversation and that we've met a few days ago. But the thing is that can you utilize it for only for healthcare data, or it's more broad spectrum?
No, absolutely not. So we are thinking of data lake system as useful for any kind of sensitive data. So probably if you think about, a simple marketing consent, you don't need such a robust security and audit layer to be able to prove that somebody can send you an email, right? But if you are thinking about healthcare data as one example, but about also your credit scores, your financial data, perhaps your mobility data, or any other information that you deem to be sensitive,
Yeah.
then your consent becomes important. And the revoke button for you may also become important. So perhaps we are not the best solution for simple marketing consents because there
Oh
are
yeah.
simpler ways of doing that. But if the consent stores value or risk for the user, then data lake is what you want to use.
We have here today. I see Poseidon DAO. Sorry, I don't see well. My glasses are probably good, but for example, Poseidon DAO it will make also research in terms of the healthcare, and I'm sure that they need to utilize consent machine. And from what I saw, really, the implementation of your product is something I can do probably in 1 hour. On inside of our code, the to add data lake, it's basically I have to create research project in the data lake system, and then just implement one piece of code on my side and make an exemption that if user will not go through this process, he won't be able to add himself to the research study. And it really looks really funny and simple. And also, when I'm considering how it will look like, Christopher mentioned about Plate. You just click on a button, and there is let's say it can be model. I mean, I would love to see the model, and we said that it's going to be model. But if it's like a model, I can see like in the top left corner my logo, information of the about the project name. I'm opening this with dedicated parameters, so your model window also knows that what is this project, when it was started, and then on the bottom I can see data lake logo as a kind of also proof of quality. Basically, I think the other thing about you've mentioned, I proposed a week ago that we should create this coalition Health Data Alliance. And what was the Wojtek answer about it? That the previous time.
Yeah, my answer was that we are thinking about creating something very similar. We even have the visuals for it, which I'm happy to share with you, although they are not probably the best. And we thought about a very similar initiative, which we used to call Health Data Coalition. Rather than Health Data Alliance. So we couldn't have been happier to hear that you're actually the one to lead us towards that direction, and we are thrilled and delighted to join.
Thank you so much. So you have this first announcement today, or maybe even second, that Data Lake will join us. I mean, join the Health Data Alliance. It's for everyone who is trying to do some research, and we are not the leaders. We just created this organization. We want to share our data sets that we have and the structure of those data sets. So in the long run, it will help all researchers that will came up to any DeSci project in the future, also to find a source of quality data that was also collected with the technology. Maybe all of this will be with the consent from data lake. Maybe some other companies will deliver such protocol, but now I don't see anything else. And it means that we are building a rich soil for research where we have a already created project that we are integrating with this project. So just utilizing really good things that were done before, you can see the data lake is also is listed. You can find its the token on the blockchain. Um, would you like to share some news about the blockchain decisions, changes, moves, or something, or it's still secret?
Absolutely, we can absolutely share, and we are happy to do so. So we've explained how we use the blockchain for securing the consent and for ensuring the quality of management of sensitive consents. Naturally, we also do have our token, which is called the Lake token on the Ethereum blockchain, publicly traded and available. And the token has or will have three kinds of utilities. The first one, which is already live and you can use it as we speak, is that every holder of 10,000 Lake tokens can access our app, which is available at app.data-lake.co. And with 10,000 data lake coins, you can activate your what we call an enterprise and essentially use the app, set up your research project, set up the consent forms. We do not require you to plug in your credit card. Just the coins in your wallet are enough. We do not require you to stake them or send them wherever. We are just checking the balance of your wallet, right?
Yeah.
So this is a kind of access token that gives you access to our technology. The second utility we are working on right now is the utility of setting up rewards for patient recruitment participants. So as a researcher, it's up to you to decide how would you like to motivate your stakeholders in a given research. For some doctors, it's enough that you offer them, being a part of the scientific work and publication. Some professionals would like to be also incentivized in a more tangible way. So it's up to you as a researcher to set up bounties and rewards for patients, healthcare professionals, both or neither of them. It's ultimately your decision, driven by the parameters of your research. And the third utility that we have just announced, which is incredibly exciting, is the development of our own chain. We believe that for a widespread adoption of our application, certain things need to happen. So we need to have an infrastructure that is scalable and that is reasonable in terms of the cost. That can be hosted on premise of our healthcare partners. And for data lake application to be adopted widely, it has to meet strict security, scalability criteria of big healthcare enterprises. So this is why we also decided to build a rollup, which is going to be a derivative of big, well-established chains. We haven't still shared with whom we are building this chain. This is still upcoming. We are not gonna do it alone. We are gonna be a part of a larger ecosystem. But the bottom line being is that the Lake token is gonna be used for paying for the gas fees related to all the consent operations on our chain.
Yeah, the idea of creating your own token. When I first heard about it, I was like, hmm. But when we started discussions how it would be utilized, there are really bigger amount of pros than cons. Because just imagine that if other projects would decide to utilize the same technology and the same mesh and the same set of computers to create nodes, we can create like a completely different quality behind the token itself. Of course, the token itself is not the main thing about DeSci. The tokens are kind of statement of sentiment, and the projects that we are creating are the main thing. But also for the longevity, security, reassurance of the continuity of the services, building separated blockchain just for certain type of projects has a value, especially when you have huge amount of transactions. And also this way you are in better position in terms of rewarding, paying, and taking fees from the system as a whole. I had this one thought about data lake, is that it looks like, and I feel I'm quite sure about it, the data lake is becoming, and quite rapidly can become now, a industry standard. I'm saying this because if you just consider that, for example, Poseidon DAO is thanks, Wojciech. Poseidon DAO, for example, is looking for patients for their research, but as far as I've seen, it will be hard for them to find really exact matching profiles. And I can imagine that even if you would shout out to all doctors you have inside of your network and tell them, we need patient this type with that kind of parameters within this age and this gender, you would probably be able to bring way more patients for Poseidon DAO than they can find. The other cool thing is that Poseidon DAO doesn't have to focus on this because you are the center of competence, so you can make it in absolutely right way with the full consent, full quality, and with broader access to doctors without making them, reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I very much like what you referred to as the industry standard. I believe, of course, there's a long way to go to becoming a standard in such a slow-moving industry as the healthcare industry. Nevertheless, we definitely see the need, and managing of consents in healthcare is wild west as we speak. So we are talking about tons of papers that get lost, that that become bleak and unreadable, where there's no way of managing them remotely for a patient. You may not even remember to what you consented to when
Oh,
you
yeah.
visited dozens of healthcare entities where you were a patient one day.
Yeah.
So we just believe that this is a natural evolution of the healthcare sector with towards more transparency, towards more control of the patients, but also ultimately towards more productivity of healthcare services providers. Because think about big hospitals and networks and the way they process and store and manage piles and piles of paper, the way they have processes in place where a patient wants to withdraw a consent. They have to actually procure from an external archive a bunch of storage boxes with a couple of thousands of consents of patients from a given month, and they have to look for it, which consumes a tremendous amount of resources. So the way it's done on a process layer right now within healthcare sector is just so tremendously mundane and results in such a tremendous loss of resources, focus, and time that there is a better way of doing it.
Yeah. So from this perspective, first of all, the most simple explanation of what you do and how it can help us at any research project here is that me as a user, as a patient, first of all, I can disconnect my data from, revoke my consent very easily. That's a maybe very simple thing, but it sounds really cool. You've mentioned those applications where they can check your bank account balances and check what kind of payments you are making, and you even forgot that you have, I don't know, Audible on your costs, and it takes $30 per every two months, and this way I can see basically, well, what if we would be able to convince every hospital or clinic or every doctor to utilize it for the sake of his, peace of mind?
That's what we are working on as we speak. So, to become an industry standard and to be widely adopted, we need to work with healthcare institutions, right? So, we need to work, according to the standards. We need to have an open API to be integrated with the broader network of healthcare informatics systems. And at the end of the day, we also need to map our data standards to the healthcare data standard. And we need our app to be usable within the context of the processes in the healthcare sector. So, for example, the way our application can be used is that it can be used by a doctor in his or her office on her mobile phone, where she can collect consents, from the patient when they are seated across the doctor's desk. but it can also be used on the hospital registration desk, collecting consents from hundreds of patients who just register to the hospital or healthcare services provider every day as a part of the admission process to the hospital, for example. Ultimately, as you have mentioned, we can also embed our consent forms in the digital sphere, in the digital world, where the patient can give the consent remotely. So, for example, they don't need to read through long consent forms with, with the limited time they have for the interaction with the doctor, but they can have the consents sent to them remotely prior to the meeting, read them, understand them, and actually give a truly informed consent, right?
Well, you can if your clinic, if your local doctor is using data lake to collect the data consent, the patient consent, I can come back to my data lake application or log in on the data lake page and find this recently signed consent, read the whole thing if I have some time, check it out again, or see something that I don't like and revoke the consent.
Which doesn't mean that you'll do it, but the very knowledge and awareness that you can do it, I think changes
Yep.
a lot.
Yeah, where
Absolutely.
now can you go to see where you've shared your data? Like if you were to go right now and say, I want to know where it all went, where do you go?
Nowhere. This is not even supported by the national health systems.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not, because there's plenty of forms in which you can consent. If we consent as two mutually consenting adult individuals, recorded live in an oral form, this is also a binding form of a consent, right? So if you say that you'd like to share your healthcare information with me, this is also a binding consent. So what I mean is that there is no standard format of consent. Sometimes consent is also collected, from patients in the presence of two other doctors in an oral form.
Yeah.
And this also happens. So
We are talking about emergency situations.
exactly.
But the also cool thing is that inside of the data lake application, if you are a clinic or if you are a researcher and you want to you want to collect this consent from patients from different doctors or clinics, first of all, you have to create your project, which is just describe what kind of research you are doing, and then also choose all things that are necessary to build this consent form.
Exactly.
At the end, it appears as a digital something, and you can read it from A to Z, or just consent it right away and then read it later at your home.
Exactly.
But still, the data lake is kind of one point of the yeah, it's like a hub with the information about all my consents. Yeah, we should make something like a I don't know. It should be more, popularize the consent, digital consent solution.
It's a matter of
Fortunately,
time. It's just a matter of time because it just makes sense. And Mac, and all the folks that we've been speaking with that are pretty much decision makers in the industrial realm of the medical field, they all see that there's so many bottlenecks, so many problems. And I guess recently with the hacks of I think United Healthcare, everyone's just catching up and they have a pencil and pen, and it's mind boggling to see. Like I think everybody understands that something has to be done, and this is seemingly like the next best step to take. It's obvious. So it's really exciting to see that they have worked on this so hard, and that it can be kind of extrapolated across different countries, and through all the correlate with all the different medical fields. And exactly like everyone was saying, is like you want to find specific information, and now you can. Well, where were you able to do that before? And now you can. And it's just wonderful to see that there's an organizational structure now, and maybe it's up to all of us in DeSci to kind of make this a cohesive mission, and it's very exciting. So again, congrats to you guys for putting this together. It seems like a very awesome thing for us to integrate with, and I think it'll take steam very quick, especially as I think everyone sees the need.
Guys, I couldn't have been more happier to hear it because, if you distill it to what it is, we are dealing with a very boring legal document, right? A consent. But if you really dig deep into it and you understand why is it important, right? From the ethical point of view, from the, I don't know, research point of view, then this little boring piece of legal stuff is what holds back a tremendous wave of medical innovation, because right now, a lot of institutions are afraid to unlock medical data for research. They are afraid of the privacy ramifications. They are afraid of the patient perception of their use of data for something else than health services. As you said, there are also unfortunately repeated data leaks from healthcare companies. So patients are rightfully afraid. So by giving them this control tool, by giving them, this kind of steering wheel, we can potentially unlock this tremendous amount of very valuable resource that right now the industry is just too afraid to utilize.
And this tool is streamline this, make it really fast, simple.
Hopefully.
No. I've seen it. It works really fast. I mean, in terms of the how fast I can make a consent and how fast I can revoke it. So, in terms of the outcomes from also this meeting and also this discussion, this here is first of all we will AxonDAO officially is saying that we are going to utilize data lake in our three upcoming projects. This month we will be testing Ultra Plus Voice and A Plus Voice. Next month we are rolling out the project from Tarusha Jasenia. It's a Silosis. And all those three projects they require to make a consent. So in all those three cases, we will, from the get-go, from the day zero, we will be consent ready and pristine in this department. That's the one thing. Second thing, Medical Health Data Alliance. Um, it looks like, I mean, it's alliance, so basically all actors, anyone who will join this project will have the same rights and same vote. But I feel like data lake will become kind of backbone of that, because basically any type of data set that people will show, whether it's going to be AxonDAO or maybe some data from Poseidon DAO or Ultra DAO or maybe WellShare Health, hopefully all this data should be collected based on consent. So, also, this Health Data Alliance that we created makes kind of a solid ground for data lake growth. And also, it helps us because one thing is that we are bringing data lake to all our partners, but in the same time, data lake is bringing to all of us, to Axon, to any project that want to be part of this alliance. You are bringing to us a clinics you already working with, doctors or institutions that are making research around the data, around the and they have this consent already, or they can state, because it's not always situation where patient is giving this consent, but also the institution that collected the data and the data is anonymized properly.
Yes.
Then institution can also give this kind of consent, but only if it's done in a standard that can be accepted as a kind of industry approach.
Yeah, I mean,
What else? What else to say?
just kind of final remarks. But us sitting together here, doing the spaces for 2 hour communities simultaneously, and having this kind of very straightforward way of working together,
Yep.
makes me really happy, because we are kind of doing our thing as data lake for a lot of time, building and trying to crack the nut of really getting it right, and getting our product right. website and making it useful for scientists and scientific projects like yourself. And I'm just very happy that we see this kind of emerging cooperations and this crystallization points of projects actually working together, of pushing towards delivering real value from decentralized science. So it's not just intellectual game anymore, but I think that we are gonna see real medical innovation impacting lives of patients coming out from the decentralized science sector very soon.
Christopher, question: do we have any questions from the community, because
No, I don't see any. But I see Ed's hands up.
Ed?
Yeah, I wanted to mention we have a new project in agriculture. For people who don't know, I work in the regenerative agriculture movement, and John Kemp, founder of Advancing EcoAg, recently did a WeFunder, and because he works with a lot of farmers and other people, and he's gotten in over $2 million. Because what we've realized is, and the good thing is, we're focusing, we're not focusing on the livestock yet, we're working on the plants. The good thing with a plant is you don't have to get consent. and the other thing is, we're not trying to genetically modify organisms or create some kind of new synthetic chemical. So we're just trying to understand health. And John's been working on this for 10 to 15 years, works with thousands of farmers, and he was originally using sap analysis of the plant to be able, and then balancing the nutrition, understanding plant nutrition for health. And then he started to want to bring in some metagenomics, DNA. He's now, with this new project, he's going to use third generation DNA. And the next thing that he realized we needed to understand was the metabolomics and the understanding, epigenetics, because we realized that just understanding DNA wasn't enough. It's more how the DNA expresses that becomes really important. And we have plenty of examples with that. Where there is a huge difference. So, that's where we realize the inadequacies of DNA. And of course, we have new technologies that are coming out all the time to be able to do all this. So he's connected with a company called Croptics that can do this metabolomics of soil and plant, so we can understand the polyphenols and the terpenes and all the other elements and their effect. He can use the sap analysis to understand nutrition. He can use the third generation DNA to get the most advanced, and what we're building is a complete system of understanding health. And we're really feeling that if we can understand health in a plant, we're really not much different. And the good thing is that we can make a lot of progress quickly because we don't have all the regulations and consent issues, as I said, because, we don't have to get the approval from a plant. And so we're able, and I think that and he's really, from what he's said recently, he's wants to be as collaborative and open source as possible in this. All the research we're doing and the technology, we want to make the technology affordable so that any farmer can use it around the world. We don't want to create something, same as we're trying to do in medicine. I mean, it doesn't make any good to create something or a drug if it costs $1 million. So, and I think the more we work together, because what we're learning is between biome and nutrition, that's a huge way to avoid so many problems that people have. And that's what we're doing with plants. We're getting plants now that are so healthy, they're resistant to many diseases that plants have been getting for decades and nobody's been able to solve them. And if you do solve them with a chemical or something, then that weakens the plant and then something else hits it. And that's the concern about medicine, side effects. So I think, and if we can tie these two works together, human and plant data,
Mhm.
then we can understand the approach a lot quicker with plants. And yet it's going to be a lot of the same technology that we're starting to see that you're going to want. And the same, and then if we can
Yeah.
connect those data, then we're really going to make progress. We're going to tie.
Ed, I have a question. Is it going to be also kind of DeSci cooperative idea project? Because it sounds like there is, I know that there is more institutions, companies, people who are doing something with the biome soil analysis. How is your take for this?
We've always been basically DeSci.
Yeah.
Big corporations, they don't know anything about this stuff, and they're not really interested in it. They have their status quo, same as your medical system. I mean, if we
Mm.
change the system, then all the things that they have that they make money on, all of a sudden they're not making money on them. So we've
But I
all,
can, yeah, I can imagine that in the short run, even we can make a cross projects between your DeSci and other DeSci projects that are connected with analyze the human health and how you can change or induce human health with the properly grown, fair, not modified, not hybridized food.
right. And even if you're working on solving a disease, as we've talked in spaces before, I mean,
Mm.
if they've got a nutrition problem or a lack of nutrition problem, makes it a lot harder for you to understand how to solve that disease or cure that
Mm.
disease. So, and our thing is let's avoid disease, let's make ourselves resilient,
Yeah.
like we
Well,
used to be.
well, the problem seems to be
Yeah.
that having people remain sick is better for the bottom dollar, unfortunately. But the other thing is though, if you can provide a service that finds the bottom dollar and figures it out for them, then they're going to start looking. And all of a sudden, if you can do something that matters to their bottom line, then all of a sudden they're going to look. So I think if we just keep on that path, that's where you start connecting with those big corporations. But Poseidon, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, so this was such a great space. And um, Wojtek, my question to you is like, so how many doctors do you already have in the community, or that are part of your that are using the product?
Sure, good question. Happy to share. We have a couple dozen doctors. So we did a number of research projects, right? One was kind of a blanket consent collection effort where we collected more than 60,000 consents in one particular hospital network. In such case, we had probably a couple hundred people as a personnel of that entity, reaching out to patients and collecting consents from them. But we also drew conclusions from that project, and since then we only exercise very targeted consent collection efforts. So essentially, we always define the target group we are seeking. And then we define the professionals who have access to that target group. And we also observe that most of the times there is, this kind of uneven distribution, or the Pareto rule, where 20 or even less percent of our, we call them referral partners, are responsible for delivering majority of patients. So right now we take a very focused, very narrow approach that is based on defining well what kind of doctors we want to work with. For example, right now we are working on a rare diseases patient registry, right? A very important problem. It's a disease to which a novel drug is currently being introduced on the market. We have a couple dozen patients in Poland who suffer from this disease, and there's a need for an periodically updated data repository, which is called a registry, that is used for tracking the effect of the medication, the patient quality of life, and essentially all the good and bad things that can happen or as a byproduct of an introduction of a novel therapy. But for example, in this kind of research project, we are working only with 13 doctors because this is, 30 or 50 patients in the whole country. So we don't have to have thousands of doctors or hundreds of doctors working with us because we know exactly who we are looking for. This is, of course, very case specific. And in cases of that research, we are the research organization. So we are using the data lake application as the infrastructure to fuel our own research. The model that is way more scalable is us making the infrastructure available to whoever wants to use it. And then ultimately, it's up to you as a researcher to define your recruitment strategy. Who do you need to reach? How many patients would you like to recruit? What's the deadline for recruiting these patients? How do you like to compensate your referral partners or patients, right? Or both. So we are just giving you the tools. We are happy to share our experiences, but ultimately we are sharing with you our technology. And you're the one at the steering wheel. You're the one defining the strategy to find the right patient.
But the answer is that you have at least you are in contact with at least 200, 300 doctors,
more or less, yeah.
within the projects that already data lake processed.
Yes, I think that would be accurate. Yeah.
And one of those projects was about consent of basically, you get the consent of 60,000 patients, certain type of disease.
Exactly.
And it was performed in how much time it took you?
Over a year, I believe.
But it's still 60,000 patients that can share the data with the research that also you've been doing.
Yes, exactly.
So Data Lake is also a healthcare institution, like a registered.
We are not.
And you did research?
Yes, because you don't need to be a registered healthcare services provider to be able to do research.
Okay.
One thing I'd like to add before Poseidon is that one thing that I think kind of just, it's me personally, is that the original idea we came up with when we had our first meeting to discuss, AxonDAO and how we're going to do this in 2021, it was that there's so many issues and there's like niche diseases that people suffer from constantly. And how do you find those people? How do you coagulate? And the thing is, it's like Facebook and these random, online meeting groups, but there's nothing that puts it in traction. And I feel like this is really the start of that. I think we all have personal issues, personal relationships with people that have these types of issues, and it's good to see that maybe there's a pathway for these non extremely profitable drug solutions or therapies now have a chance to get out to the people, and at least now you can start interacting with these people that have these niche issues. And it's just so great to see that we're all kind of in alignment and have been working on this for years, and now we're all intersecting. It's just really awesome to be in this thing. But Poseidon, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, Wojtek, that was such a fantastic answer, and as Mack already highlighted and used as an example, like we aim to fund personalized medicine research. So with personalized medicine, we try to create the most, I mean, obviously the most successful treatment tailored to the patient, so the patient actually has some benefit instead of just giving giving treatment to a patient and let's hope it works. But what is such a problem is everything around it, like the ethics, the like getting approval from the ethical committee to set up a clinical trial, and then when you can speed up, like find the doctors that could recruit the patients, speed up the consent process, like that, we can get those treatments so much quicker to the patient, and the innovation like will just it's like this vicious circle of innovation, and it's just awesome, man.
We spoke about it yesterday, about this cycle, about how it slows down everything. Even I'm thinking about one thing, Marco, that for example, you can create a research consent application on data lake, and then go directly to the people who you found with rare diseases, even on Facebook groups, and tell them, guys, we are this entity, we are making this research. There is a solution that you can give a consent and we can start cooperating and trying to find out more about your very rare disease. And even if one thing is that, for example, data lake can bring you the patients that match the criteria, but in the same time you can also advocate to the people who might be fit into your thing directly to, I don't know if you can hear us, guys.
You
Yeah,
reckon?
we
Yes.
can hear you.
No, there was some kind of message on the phone from Wojtek. But nevertheless, you can also bring probable communities, and those people who will go through the data lake consent system, they will be responsible for if they are matching your criteria. And it will bring you probably a few times more and way faster. Like basically from one day to another day, you can have 10, 15, 20 new possible patients.
So it's a digital patient recruitment channel.
Yeah.
Of course, this the way you find the patient varies from disease to disease. If you're talking about, for example, heart attack, then you only recruit through doctors. If you're talking, about a particular rare disease with very well organized patient association and a
Oh yeah.
substantial digital presence, then you might also think about a digital recruitment strategy. And in that case, of rare diseases specifically, this is usually a good way to interact with patients. And of course, our system allows that, so you can cater for the physical recruitment channel and the digital recruitment channel as well.
At the end, it all goes through the highly regulated funnel.
Exactly.
And you as a owner of this competence make this as proper as possible, as necessary to be. Some odd communicates about. Nevertheless, do we have additional questions today?
Poseidon, Marco has hand up.
Yeah.
I mean, if I may, right? If there are other people, then like they should really ask the question first. So are there any other questions, or can I just go ahead?
Go ahead.
Go on. Go ahead.
All right, Wojtek. So, when what is like you mentioned like a layer, like that you would have your own network, and that the data lake token would play a role in that for gas fees. So when it comes to the consent process and recruitment of patients through the doctors, like what is the exact role of the token in that specific process?
Sure. So also it depends to a certain degree on you as a researcher. So as for now, we are utilizing another chain where we as data lake, we are paying for the transaction fees out of our wallet. So you as a researcher, you have no interaction when you process the consents with our token, not necessarily. In the future, you would have to have the lake tokens to pay for the transactions on our chain, right? So you would have to have a certain amount of the tokens stored in your enterprise account on the data lake application, and if they run out, you would have to top them up to be able to cover the fees of processing the consents. The second thing that will be optional for you is you may decide to set up bounties and rewards for the referring partners, for the patients, for both of them, or for neither of them. So this depends on the relationship that you have with your partners. This depends on the type of the research that you are conducting. And finally, this depends on the kind of incentives that you think will increase the engagement with your research to the highest level. So the second is an option for you. And the first one, so using the token to pay for the transaction, is going to be obligatory once our chain goes live.
And if I can follow up on that, is when you look at the current costs for setting up this, the consent and recruiting the patients, and the costs associated with that in the traditional system compared to that of data lake, how much cheaper is data lake?
So we actually are currently talking with a big healthcare partner with 8 figures of patients that they care for yearly. And they did a comprehensive analysis that took them a couple of months to estimate the loss that comes as a result of the current process of processing paper consents, right? And the figures were in millions of dollars yearly. So we are talking, of course, about a huge enterprise, but the costs and the inefficiencies stack up. So first of all, you have to print the consent forms. Second of all, whenever there's any change and a withdrawal, you need to process it. Third, you need to hire people to cater for all the requests of patients.
Librarians.
Exactly. So
There's pay for the space to keep those boxes with consent.
Precisely. Plus, there is, also certain legal and compliance risk that you're undertaking if you, for example, lose a consent form and so on and so on. So I didn't see that analysis myself. They didn't disclose it to us, but they disclosed the final result, which was millions of dollars lost as a result of the inefficiencies.
I don't want to throw my idea, but I think it can be even like 40 times less, even maybe 50 times less than just upkeeping paper consents and keep them in the storage facility and try to protect it, keep some security people who will not allow anyone to enter in, or protect it from fire, flood. You have basically
For at least 25 to 30 years.
and here you upkeep the consent. It's encrypted based on the data that was provided. It's encrypted. It's kept on a chain, but there is no way you can just open this. It's just impossible. And you don't keep any medical data on chain. Just like a kind of timestamp or kind of encrypted key that you can generate again to reassure that this certain consent is the right one. And also the consents inside of the system, this is really crazy. You can have more versions of the same consent. So if as an organization your expectations toward the quality of how you collect the data is getting higher, or you need to modify some text inside of your consent, you can do it, but it will automatically generate a new version of the same consent, like a new revision. And people are, from this point of time, they are signing this modified consent, which is also has its own unique consent number.
Exactly.
And it's really, 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 really well thought.
And to be clear about how the blockchain interacts with data lake, Wojciech, maybe you could speak to this in a little more detail, but essentially it's just that it makes a ledger of the timestamps and it verifies when and how it was engaged. Other than that, everything else is in an encrypted situation, correct?
Correct. Of course, I could elaborate, much more on the anatomy of our consent smart contract and what exactly and in what way is stored on the chain. But you were right, and that was an accurate description.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how far off the detailed path we're going to get, but
I
I'm
don't
just trying
I
to
don't
make it
think that we
clear.
want to get too
Yeah.
too much down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, because I think that was just a general understanding that the blockchain and health data aren't coagulating. They're not coordinating other than the verification timestamps, just to make sure that you have all those verifications in place and they can't be omitted.
Even if you would decompile somehow, dehash this main key, which is like a key that is just approval that the original data, if you would hash this original data again, that keys will be the same. Even if you will decompile it, you are hashing 4 different vectors of the information, and at the end it looks like it just nothing that you can. It's just impossible.
The most you can decode is just one consent. So if you even somehow guess the what we call the patient signature, so a derivative of the patient personally identifiable information with a cryptographic salt, then this is also generated uniquely for every single consent. So even if you decode that kind of, and you link the patient signature with the physical patient, you only get the data of one particular consent, which also is great from the cybersec point of view, because we generate the salt independently for every consent.
Yeah.
So you're saying that there's if no one, if everyone's using your system, there wouldn't be this massive data breach, is what you're saying.
I would love to say it, but I can't, because we are not essentially a cybersecurity measure. We are a consent management layer, so we wouldn't prevent, the
Data leak
exactly
from third-party companies.
But in terms
exactly.
of like
So
what they would be able to say, worst case scenario, there would just be one consent form and not like a
oh yes,
massive dump.
exactly.
Yeah.
Still, even if you would be able to kind of unlock this one consent, the only one thing you can do is basically to revoke this consent.
Yes, exactly.
You are not hacking the health data, you are just revoking. You can just disconnect this patient from this certain consent, just close it,
And
that's
that's the
it.
power of
Well,
having the blockchain being the verifier here, other than
yeah,
other systems.
it's something like recently utilized heavily, zero knowledge, salt bound tokens. It's a solution that allows to do the same thing for the people who are not, for example, having the blockchain wallets. They don't know about the blockchain, they don't have to know about the blockchain.
Exactly.
It's very, very smart.
Yeah, that's the
If
whole
I
point, is to try to make this as non Web3, as non crypto as
Yeah.
possible, and that's like the beauty of all these technologies, to have them be used and just not know what it does, but know that it works. And I think that's what we're trying to get to. And I think, I mentioned Plaid. I don't know if any, I think a lot of people understand what Plaid is, but I think you just trust it. You trust that it works. You click it, it's verifiable, that it's a third party and they have all their, reputable accreditations. So just think of it like this. You just, every time you go to a doctor or whatever you want to do, this is how you integrate. And this is like that third party layer that's kind of validating things in such a secure and standard way that I think it'll be a matter of time before we just mention data lake as we mentioned Plaid, because I think it's just a no-brainer in terms of the progress in which we all kind of are thirsting for, especially in DeSci and how this could be used. It's just so awesome to really identify more in our talkings with Data Lake exactly what they do. And I think maybe that wasn't as clear for us, and understanding that. And I'm glad that we were able to kind of put some light on where they live and their niche of DeSci, and how we can again use all the best features that we all put out together. And yeah, it's just been a great chat, and I think we're really excited to hit the next steps with them for sure.
it looks like it's a beginning of very beautiful cooperation and probably even friendship, like in Casablanca at the end.
Yeah.
But the thing is that not only we will utilize data lake technology, but also we will for sure try to convince other institutions like AxonDAO to seriously consider this. And the Health Data Alliance is something that will build up way more efficient channels to grow the projects based on the consent data, and also to reach out to data that was already collected, that they have the proper consent, and we can at least empower new coming projects with the patients who will give the vote or decision or whatever, if they are okay with sharing the data or using their data with new upcoming projects.
Amazing.
Yeah, and like
Thank you
just
so much for
having us.
well, Mac, I mean, maybe we could speak a little bit about how we would see this used in our like silosis, for example. Is we're looking for a certain type of patient or somebody to work in the microdosing standards that we're putting together, and so like say in that process that we would have people sign up and they would go through this data lake infrastructure and give their consent and through their process. We have that third party uh, verification to know that it's being hosted, the information is being hosted and housed in a certain manner, and that everyone's sort of isolated from having controls to the where the data is, and that ultimately the patient has the ultimate control there. And I think it's just going through these use cases and just going through the quirks and the tweaks that we would have to do. But I think once we get past our first or second use case, at least with Axon, um, that we'll be able to start really rolling this out in a grander scale. So I don't see that it's going to be too long before we're going to really be able to integrate all these systems together. I think that everyone has done a lot of homework. We've pulled the wires so far, so to speak, and we just need to kind of tie them together. So that to me feels like we're really close. This isn't something we're going to wait a year to be able to employ. I think we're going to be talking in terms of months or less to be able to have a real use case for this, at least with Axon. So that's what's exciting for us, to
I know the
talk about the
answer.
next steps, and that they're going to be soon.
Yeah, I know the answer. The answer is that we will integrate data lake with Axon uh, research protocol this month, because when we are, it was meant to be kind of maybe not surprise, but we want to roll out two applications before June, and from what I've seen, the way that it's how to integrate data lake with our ecosystem, it's easy enough that we can do it for sure this month. And I can tell you that even inside of our back office, where you are managing the research protocol and research project, uh, it's really very simple to add this additional research ID from data lake and even integrate some interfaces. So we're using the API, but in the long run and in the same time, the patient who will attend and take part in the research will utilize data lake that will be opened as a modal window, like Blade, like PayPal when you pay somewhere. Yeah, I'm really curious about how you feel, how you will feel as a users of that, and I hope that all of I mean, our communities will be also able to try it, play with it, give some thoughts, maybe some UX improvements. I want to have it like the best thing in the world, and it will work out like this. Yep, thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening, and it's been lovely to be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. It was a great chat. Poseidon, Ed, Data Lake, everybody. Thank you for your comments and yeah, just keep going. Everybody, just follow everybody here. Check out Data Lake. Check out
Yeah.
Poseidon. Just go through the gauntlet. I think everybody here in DeSci and everybody in this crowd is got a cool knack for what this is, and if not, they're curious to know. And we're a little naive and just trying to change the world ourselves a little bit. I guess that's cliche to say, but at the same time, I mean, that's what we're tasked with right now, and I think you can hear it from all of us. We have the same sentiment. So yeah, just keep in touch with us anyway, and just keep going back and forth with everybody on this chat. Catch up with Data Lake, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. A wonderful space once again.
Thank you. All right, y'all.
キスしたいとで読み直しているで読み直しているだけがで読み直しているで読み直しているで読み直している